If you've had a spiritual awakening, you know how disheartening it can be to go from a high vibrational state to having something happen that triggers you and you get knocked down to here. In this video, we're going to talk about how to get yourself back up. This is one of the basic key principles to spirituality that when we go back to this basic, it always leaves you feeling so much more expansive, so much more free, and all of a sudden you're back into that high vibrational state. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Michaela, and I help people on their spiritual awakening journey. So today I wanted to talk about the highs and lows of a spiritual awakening. If you've been through a spiritual awakening, you're probably all too well familiar with that really high vibrational buzzy feeling. In the beginning, it can be like this pink cloud where you're on cloud nine, you're just so happy, joyous, free. You feel like nothing can ever get you down. You know, you were looking at your life through these lenses that literally like had crap on the lenses, and you were trying to see everything like this. And then all of a sudden it was like somebody just showed you, why don't you just take the glasses off? And you start to see this whole new world around you, and you had no idea. You had no idea that there was so much like pain and suffering for no reason. Then there's another part of a spiritual awakening too, where you can really hit some of these lows, where you know what it's like to feel so expansive and happy. And then, but yet you're down here. Maybe something triggered you, maybe some like traumatic response, maybe a bad situation happened that is meant for a lesson. And it's kind of keeping you down here at a lower vibration, and you don't know how to get out of it. What makes it even worse is the fact that you know that there's high vibrational states that you can feel like super expansive, and yet you're down here. So it almost causes like a little bit more pressure to like get to that point. How the heck do I go from here to feeling like this? And all the positive affirmations in the world and all the meditation, it just doesn't seem to be helping. What I really wanted to touch on is something that can kind of be overlooked, and we kind of cling to all these different healing modalities. And really, it is like the core basis of spirituality, and that is clinging and suffering. Anything that happens in our life has no meaning other than the meaning that which we give it. So this means that you and I can go throughout our entire lives and pick up a lot of baggage along the way with childhood trauma, maybe some abusive relationships or cheating happened, or some traumatic instances happen in our adult life. And so now we're seeing our life through the lens of all this crap. And just as like when we first spiritually awaken, we realize like, oh, I could just remove these glasses. Sometimes we hold on to the hardest things. And the universe is continually giving us little lessons, little things that we may go through that can be used as teachers or something that continues to bring us suffering. But if we don't look at it with that growth mindset of learning a lesson out of it, we really cause suffering within ourselves. The reason why we don't want to suffer and we hold on so desperately is purely because of our ego. Our ego was put into place to keep us alive and to keep us safe. That is a wonderful tool. We don't want to live a life where we're so blind and reckless that we put ourselves in really horrible situations. But our ego is so intrinsic sometimes that we don't even notice the confines that it puts us in. It puts us into a mental prison. Sometimes we don't even realize that we are playing everything safe, which can be really detrimental for our peace and our happiness. Throughout life, we are an accumulation of everything that has ever happened to us. And we develop these stories that say we can't do something, or we are the way we are, or we're stuck because we hit these boundaries or these walls that we're unwilling to touch. We believe that reality is the way it is because we don't know any better, because we're afraid to touch those walls and to break down those barriers. But that's where true spirituality comes in, is becoming one, aware of what your walls are, and two, breaking free of those walls. My best example of mental boundaries is my family all struggled with addiction, my mom, dad, and brother. So growing up, this is what I saw. And so it was not really talked about, but there was this general sense of, oh, well, we all struggle with addiction, so ha ha ha. And it was almost like a pride thing to be an alcoholic. And so when I started to become of age and I started drinking and using heavily, I had this mental construct that this was normal or this was okay. And yeah, I kind of knew like, okay, the rest of the world doesn't do what I'm doing. But at the same time, my ego was keeping me safe by saying, oh, this is normal. Oh, this is safe. This is what you know. This is what your mom and dad were. This is what your brother was. So therefore, why try to change it? This is what's safe. This is what you know. So let's not break that boundary. It wasn't until I got sober and I was able to lift those lenses up and really see reality for what it was. I started to understand that I had been living a lie my entire life. And it wasn't until I got sober that I actually started to live. All this time, I was playing it safe by feeding into my addiction. It was scary to feel my emotions. It was scary to handle life on life's terms. But it wasn't until I finally decided that I'm not going to cope with life anymore with drugs and alcohol that I finally began to start living, that I finally got to start experiencing my emotions. And then I started to really develop like a life that is beyond my wildest dreams today. The thing is about that mental barrier was I had no idea it was there. I had no idea because I had built my entire life around it. I surrounded myself with people who also were drinking and using. I had no idea that there was like a normal life outside of that. And so it wasn't until I got sober that I started to see the world wasn't the way that I painted it. Now, addiction is just one of many different mental boundaries that we can have. This can look like if your family lineage struggled with maybe some unhealthy eating habits and you subscribe to the fact that you can't change because this is the way that your mom and dad were, and so therefore you're like this, or maybe you struggled with an eating disorder, so you can't lose the weight anymore because you're afraid. It's all about these fears that are keeping us safe. It can also look like poverty. Maybe your parents didn't make a lot of money growing up, so you couldn't go to college. And so therefore you settle in this 9 to 5 that you hate and you barely make minimum wage. And it also can look like maybe your parents made a lot of money and they supported you so much and you were bottle fed, so you don't know how to take care of yourself. You feel like you can't take care of yourself anymore because somebody else is always taking care of you. So our mental construct can be confined of anything. The ego is very tricky in making these mental boundaries. And the thing is until you start to become aware of it, you don't even know that you're struggling with it. It's really about practicing that awareness of seeing where you are in your life and where these fears start to pop up and learning how to kind of play with it and see like, does this fear really need to control my life anymore? Or is there something that I can do to go beyond and expand? We, as the human consciousness, choose so many things to keep us safe. It can be as simple as the way that we dress, the way that we interact with others, the way that we look, in order for us to feel validated and connected to others. It can look like on a larger scale, it could be the careers that we choose, the financial bracket that we're in, the houses that we choose, the cars that we drive. It is all about keeping us safe. It is our way of trying to stay in control. We're in this world where there's so many unpredictable things. And so, of course, we're going to try to scratch and control and try to hold on for dear life because life is unpredictable and there's infinite possibilities. And our egos will kind of tell us that the worst of them all is going to happen to us. And that's where the I behind all of this is so important, to really step back and to pay attention to this mental chatter. Our mental chatter is going to tell us about our fears, our resentments, our attachments. And it's really up to us to kind of sit back as you're engaged in these thoughts and ask yourself, who am I? You're not even John Doe, the one that went to high school and was on the football team and then went to college and got this awesome job and bought the house with the family and the kids and the dog. That is just your ego and the way that it's found its way to stay protected. Really, who you are is so much more than that. It's so much more expansive. Who was observing all of that? Who was observing you as you played football in high school? Who was observing you as you went to college? Who observes you as you go to work today? There's this consciousness behind you that when we get connected to it and when we start to realize how much our ego clings and controls to so many things to keep us safe, we really then start to realize how out of control we are. And that can be a very scary place. But here's the thing, when we get connected to that, we start to realize that there are infinite possibilities that our life can turn out. For some reason, our egos will hold on to the worst of the worst. It's like your family is driving from the grocery store back home and you think they're going to die and this is the end of their life. And what do you know? 5 minutes later, they're back home. But our egos are wired to do this. Solution to the mental chatter, the insanity of it all, is to really become aware of your life, of what's going on around you, paying attention to your body. And we can get lost in what's happening in our body. It happens all the time. But the real important thing is to always bring it back, to get in touch with who's actually feeling that. Yes, there's your body, there's you that is doing all these things, but who is observing it? And see, we can put our consciousness on anything. We can put it on our consciousness of our finger. If you pay attention to the way your finger feels, you can put your consciousness, your awareness on your entire body. You can put your awareness on this entire room. You can put your awareness on even this world. And you know, as you sit there and you just close your eyes real quick, you can kind of play with those points of consciousness. And when you start to tap into that, that's when we open up to the field of possibilities. When we're trying to call something into our life, we set that intention, right? But then we come up with a plan. And it's super easy to get tied up into the idea of how it's all going to fall into place and this is how it's going to happen. How you get out of that is putting your awareness on that consciousness, on that collective consciousness, onto the world, onto the room, onto your body, but not connecting to the body, but observing the body. And when you start to do that, you open yourself up to these infinite possibilities. See, it doesn't have to happen the way that we think. It can happen in so many different arrays. And I know from my own personal experience that every time I think something is going to happen one way, first of all, it doesn't happen that way. And second of all, it happens 10 times better. And that's where we learn the trust in the universe. At first, when you take small risks, it's scary. But as you keep walking the path with the universe, with your creator, you can take bigger risks and you start to realize that the universe is going to catch you. You realize that your creator is going to catch you and you're going to get to where you want to be, but probably better, but probably 10 times better than you could ever see. You know, for me personally, in my lash business, I heard signs a lot that I wasn't dreaming big enough. I heard signs that, you know, I was okay with just making stable money and being able to go on a few vacations here and there. Being a lash artist, that's what I thought I saw in myself. That's what I wanted. And the universe kept saying, come on. Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? And finally, like that iron gate was shut. Like, no, Michaela, like, come on. And it's so funny, as I start to take these huge risks in my life, I'm met with grace, I'm met with love. And the same is true when you are on your divine path, when you are following the things that bring you joy and that peace, when you are creating consciously, that's when the universe really starts to support you. Things happen, those synchronicities happen where it's like, okay, I'm listening. And then you start to surrender into it. You start to realize that the universe has always had your back. It was you that was getting in the way. It was your will. It was your ego saying, no, it has to happen like this. It doesn't have to happen like that. There are infinite possibilities. And when we surrender into those possibilities, it is amazing what the universe will deliver. This is a practice. It's not something that's meant to be perfect. It's just something that unfolds. And the more that we practice it, the easier that it gets. And yeah, life can happen and something can pull you away and distract you, but it's all about coming back. I remember in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I always thought that I had to think positively. I remember almost giving up in a sense when I couldn't maintain that bar that I set for myself. And what I've realized over time is life does happen and you will get pulled away sometimes. And I think that's the universe's way of kind of playing with you, testing you. It's not about if you did it perfectly. It's about how often do you get back up? How often do you get knocked down? And how quick can you come back? When you practice this regularly and you find yourself getting pulled into life's drama and you start to set back and you start to observe, it really does bring you that peace and comfort that we're always trying to fill with the external. So comment down below what some of your mental barriers are, and remember to practice sitting in that observer seat. When you do this, you open up and you expand yourself to infinite possibilities. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in one of my next videos. Bye.